Alien girl's shirt torn during robbery of her mother's amulet, but one human fights back. The marketplace on Nexus Prime buzzed with the usual cacophony of alien tongues and the scent of exotic foods. Jeffrey Blackwood, a former Earth Marine with more scars than friends, shouldered his way through the crowd. His worn leather jacket and military-issue pants marked him as human, a rarity in this part of the galaxy. He'd come to this backwater trading post for some peace and quiet after too many years of combat. So far, the quiet part had been in short supply. "Fresh Andorian spices! Get your spices!" bellowed a four-armed merchant to his right. Jeffrey sidestepped a puddle of something viscous and kept moving. The sooner he got back to his rented room, the better. That's when he heard it, a sharp cry that cut through the market's din. 20 feet ahead, a commotion erupted. The crowd parted like water around a stone, revealing a scene that made Jeffrey's combat instincts kick into high alert. A female cerulean, one of those blue-skinned humanoids from the Proxima system, was struggling against a much larger alien. The assailant wore dark armor that obscured most of his features, save for his cobalt skin and cruel, twisted mouth. He had the woman by the throat, fingers wrapped around a gleaming pendant that hung from her neck. "Give it to me!" the attacker snarled, yanking hard on the chain. The woman's eyes widened in terror. "No! It was my mother's!" Jeffrey's hand instinctively moved to where his sidearm would have been, finding only empty air. Civilian life still took some getting used to. The cerulean woman was striking, tall and slender, with skin the color of Earth's oceans and hair that seemed to shimmer like polished silver. Her elegant white blouse and fitted gray skirt suggested wealth or status, but right now she looked like any other victim. "Last chance," growled the attacker, giving the chain another vicious tug. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The chain snapped with a metallic ping, and the force of it sent the woman stumbling backward. The front of her blouse tore open with a loud rip, buttons flying in all directions like tiny projectiles. One of those buttons, because the universe had a sick sense of humor, zinged through the air and smacked Jeffrey square between the eyes. "Son of a..." he muttered, momentarily distracted by the sting. When his vision cleared, he found himself staring directly at the cerulean woman's exposed chest. Her skin there was a deeper shade of blue, marked with subtle patterns that might have been fascinating under different circumstances. Their eyes met for one excruciating second. Hers flashed with embarrassment, then fury. By then, the thief was already shoving his way through the crowd, the amulet clutched in his fist. It pulsed with an unnatural light, casting eerie shadows as he fled. "Hey!" Jeffrey shouted, snapping out of his momentary stupor. "Stop right there!" The armored alien glanced back, yellow eyes narrowing. Then he bolted, moving with impossible speed for something so bulky. "Damn it!" Jeffrey muttered, then took off after him. The thief was fast, unnaturally so. He knocked over carts and pushed bystanders into Jeffrey's path. But Jeffrey hadn't survived 3 tours in the Rigel conflict by giving up easily. He vaulted over a toppled fruit stand, splashing through its colorful contents. The alien darted down an alley, clearly thinking his superior speed would win the day. But Jeffrey had spent enough time on Nexus Prime to know its layout. This particular alley was a dead end, blocked by a massive waste disposal unit. Instead of following directly, Jeffrey cut through a side passage, emerging at the other end of the alley just as the thief realized his mistake. "Nowhere to go, buddy," Jeffrey said, stepping into view. "How about you hand over that necklace and we call it even?" The alien snarled, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "Human filth. You have no idea what you're interfering with." "I know you just assaulted a woman and stole her property," Jeffrey replied, taking a step forward. "That's enough for me." The alien's hand moved to a weapon at his hip. Jeffrey tensed, ready to dive for cover. But before either could make another move, the waste disposal unit behind the thief suddenly activated with a mechanical groan. Its massive compactor arm swung out, catching the alien off guard and pinning him against the wall. Jeffrey hadn't triggered that. He glanced up to see a maintenance droid on the rooftop, its optical sensors focused on the scene below. It gave Jeffrey what might have been a thumbs up if its manipulator appendage had been designed for such gestures. Not one to question good luck, Jeffrey strode forward and plucked the amulet from the stunned alien's grasp. It was heavier than it looked, warm to the touch, with strange symbols etched into its surface. The glow had dimmed, but he could feel it pulsing against his palm like a heartbeat. "I'll take that," he said. "Thanks for making this easy." The alien spat something in a language Jeffrey's translator couldn't or wouldn't process. Whatever it was, it didn't sound friendly. Jeffrey pocketed the amulet and backed away. "Might want to work on your people skills," he called over his shoulder as he left the alley. By the time he returned to the marketplace, the cerulean woman was gone. A few bystanders pointed him toward a nearby medical station when he asked, explaining she'd gone there to compose herself after the attack. Jeffrey considered returning the amulet immediately, but thought better of it. The thief might have friends and Jeffrey's rented room had decent security. Better to lay low for a bit, make sure he wasn't being followed. He patted his pocket, feeling the strange warmth of the amulet through the fabric. Whatever this thing was, someone wanted it badly enough to cause a scene in a crowded marketplace. That made it dangerous. And dangerous things, Jeffrey had learned the hard way, were best kept close until you understood them. Jeffrey's rented room in the lower district of Nexus Prime wasn't much to look at, just a bed, a desk, and a small bathroom with questionable plumbing. But it had one thing going for it: thick walls and a reinforced door. In his line of work, privacy trumped comfort every time. He tossed his jacket onto the bed and pulled the amulet from his pocket. Under the harsh lighting of his room, it looked even stranger than before. The metal, if it was metal at all, seemed to shift between silver and gold, depending on how the light hit it. The symbols etched into its surface weren't from any language he recognized, and he'd seen plenty during his military days. "What are you?" he murmured, turning it over in his palm. The amulet was warm, warmer than it should be after sitting in his pocket. And there was something else, a faint vibration, like the purr of a contented cat. Jeffrey placed it on the desk and stepped back. His instincts told him to leave it alone, to wait until he could return it to its rightful owner. But curiosity had always been his weakness. He grabbed a stylus from the desk and gently prodded one of the symbols. Nothing happened. "Huh?" He tried another symbol, this one resembling a spiral with 3 branches. The moment the stylus made contact, the amulet flared to life. A brilliant blue light erupted from its center, filling the room with an ethereal glow. "Shit!" Jeffrey stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. The light coalesced into a swirling vortex above the desk. Within its depths, images began to form. Stars, planets, vast nebulae spanning impossible distances. It was like looking through a window into the cosmos itself. Then the images shifted, focusing on a single planet. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked remarkably like Earth. But the landmasses were all wrong. "Cerulean Prime," Jeffrey whispered, recognizing the homeworld of the blue-skinned woman from the marketplace. The image zoomed in, showing a magnificent city built into the side of a mountain. At its heart stood a massive temple, and within that temple, the vision abruptly cut off as someone pounded on his door. "Open up, human! I know you have it." The voice was female, cultured, with an accent that gave certain words a musical quality. Jeffrey didn't need 3 guesses to know who it was. He quickly pocketed the amulet and moved to the door, checking the security feed first. Sure enough, the cerulean woman from the marketplace stood outside, though she'd changed into a high-collared tunic that covered her completely. Jeffrey opened the door just enough to lean against the frame, blocking her view of the room. "Can I help you?" Her eyes, a startling violet that he hadn't noticed in the chaos earlier, narrowed dangerously. "You have to give me the amulet back right now." Jeffrey couldn't help himself. He smirked. "You know, if you'd asked nicely, I might have considered it." The woman's blue skin darkened slightly around her cheeks. A blush, he realized. "I don't have time for games. That amulet is dangerous in the wrong hands." "Like the hands of that thug who tried to take it from you?" "Precisely," she crossed her arms. "Now hand it over before you activate something you can't control." Too late for that, Jeffrey thought, but kept his expression neutral. "I was planning to return it. I just wanted to make sure you weren't being followed." "How considerate," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "My hero." Despite her hostility, Jeffrey found himself noticing things he'd missed in their brief encounter earlier. The way her silver hair caught the light from the hallway, the subtle patterns on her skin that seemed to shift when she moved, the proud set of her shoulders. She was beautiful, in an alien way that somehow made her more intriguing, not less. "Do you have a name?" he asked. She hesitated, clearly debating whether to share even that much. "Landra," she finally said. "Landra Valen." Jeffrey Blackwood. He extended his hand, then realized she might not be familiar with the human custom. To his surprise, she took it, her skin cool and smooth against his. The moment their hands touched, the amulet in his pocket pulsed with heat. Landra's eyes widened, and Jeffrey knew she'd felt it too. "You activated it," she whispered, all pretense of anger gone, replaced by something like awe or fear. "I might have poked it a little," he admitted. "Inside, now." She pushed past him into the room, closing the door behind her. "By all means, come in," Jeffrey muttered, but he was already pulling the amulet from his pocket. It glowed brighter now, the symbols along its edge pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. Landra stared at it, her expression a mixture of reverence and apprehension. "What did you see?" she asked quietly. "Your homeworld, a city in the mountains, a temple." She nodded slowly. "The Temple of Ascension. It's where the amulet was forged, generations ago." "What is this thing, Landra? And why was that guy so desperate to get his hands on it?" She reached for the amulet, then hesitated, her fingers hovering inches from its surface. "It's called the Heart of Cerulean. It's a key." "A key to what?" Her eyes met his, and something passed between them. A current of understanding, of shared purpose, despite having just met. "A weapon," she said simply. "One that could shift the balance of power across the galaxy." Jeffrey felt a chill run down his spine. "And your mother had this just hanging around her neck?" A ghost of a smile touched Landra's lips. "My mother was the high guardian of the temple. It was her duty to protect it." "And now it's yours?" She nodded, her gaze dropping to the amulet again. "When she died, the responsibility passed to me. I've spent the last 3 cycles trying to keep it out of the wrong hands." "Not doing a great job so far," Jeffrey couldn't help pointing out. Instead of the sharp retort he expected, Landra laughed, a surprisingly warm sound that transformed her face. "No, I suppose not. Though I did manage to find the one human on Nexus Prime who would chase down an armed Dravian thief for a stranger." "Lucky coincidence," Jeffrey said, though something told him luck had nothing to do with it. "There are no coincidences with the heart," Landra said, as if reading his thoughts. "It chooses." "Chooses what?" "Its protectors." She finally reached out and took the amulet from his palm. The moment she touched it, the glow intensified, bathing them both in blue light. Jeffrey felt a strange sensation, like fingers brushing against his mind. Judging by Landra's sharp intake of breath, she felt it too. "What the hell was that?" he asked when the feeling subsided. Landra stared at him, her violet eyes wide. "It's chosen you too." The explosion rocked the entire building. Jeffrey instinctively grabbed Landra and pulled her to the floor as the window shattered, sending glass shards flying across the room. His body covered hers, shielding her from the debris. "What was that?" Landra gasped, her violet eyes wide with shock. "Someone who wants your necklace," Jeffrey replied grimly, already moving toward the door. He pressed his ear against it, listening for movement in the hallway. The amulet's activation must have sent out some kind of signal. "The Dravian Syndicate," Landra whispered, clutching the heart of Cerulean tightly. "They've been hunting this for cycles. They must have detected its energy signature when you activated it." "Friends of your buddy from the marketplace?" "The Syndicate doesn't have friends, only assets." She stood, brushing glass from her tunic. "We need to leave. Now." Jeffrey grabbed his jacket and a small backpack from under the bed. "There's a maintenance shaft at the end of the hall. It leads to the lower levels." Heavy footsteps echoed outside, followed by another explosion that shook the walls. Voices shouted commands in a harsh, guttural language. "Too late for the hallway," Jeffrey muttered. He moved to the window, assessing the drop. 3 stories down was a lower rooftop. Risky, but doable. "Hope you're not afraid of heights." Landra joined him at the window, her shoulder brushing against his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Jeffrey's system, like static electricity, but warmer, more pleasant. From her sharp intake of breath, he knew she'd felt it too. "The amulet," she explained, not meeting his eyes. "The connection it's forming between us. It has certain side effects." "Side effects like what?" Before she could answer, the door to his room burst open. A massive Dravian in full combat armor filled the doorway, weapon raised. "Jump!" Jeffrey shouted, grabbing Landra's hand. They leapt from the window just as energy blasts scorched the wall behind them. For a heart-stopping moment, they were in free fall. Then they hit the lower rooftop hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Jeffrey came up in a fighting stance, pulling Landra to her feet. "Run!" They sprinted across the rooftop as more energy blasts rained down from above. The Dravians were already climbing out the window in pursuit. "This way!" Jeffrey led her to the edge of the roof where it connected to an adjacent building. They jumped the narrow gap and continued running. "Do you have a plan?" Landra called as they vaulted over a ventilation unit. "Working on it," Jeffrey replied, scanning the rooftops ahead. "There's a public transport hub 2 blocks east. If we can reach it." More blasts cut him off, forcing them to duck behind a large water tank. The shots came from a different direction. They were being flanked. "They're hurting us," Landra realized, breathing hard. Jeffrey nodded grimly. "We need a diversion." He peered around the tank. 3 Dravians were advancing from the north, while at least 2 more were closing in from the direction of his apartment. All wore the same dark armor as the thief from the marketplace, but with glowing red insignias on their chests. High-ranking syndicate enforcers. "Give me the amulet," he said suddenly. Landra's hand went protectively to her chest. "What?" "No." "Trust me." His eyes locked with hers. "I have an idea." Something passed between them, that same current he'd felt when they touched the amulet together. Understanding, connection, trust. Reluctantly, she handed him the heart of cerulean. The moment it touched his palm, warmth spread up his arm, and for a fleeting second, he could sense Landra's emotions, her fear, her determination, and something else. Something directed at him that made his pulse quicken. "When I say run, head for that maintenance ladder," he instructed, pointing to the far edge of the roof. "It'll take you down to street level. The transport hub is 3 blocks east after that." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." She didn't look convinced, but nodded. "Don't die, human. I'd hate to have to find another protector." Jeffrey grinned. "Wouldn't dream of disappointing you." He waited until the Dravians were closer, then stood suddenly, holding the amulet high. "Looking for this?" he shouted. The amulet flared to life, its blue glow intensifying as if responding to his challenge. The Dravians halted, their weapons trained on him. "The heart," one of them growled. "Hand it over and we might let you live." "Tempting offer," Jeffrey replied, "but I'll pass." He threw the amulet, not at the Dravians, but straight up into the air. As all eyes followed its arc, he shouted, "Run!" Landra sprinted for the ladder while Jeffrey dove in the opposite direction, drawing the Dravians' fire. The amulet reached the apex of its throw and began to fall. Time seemed to slow. Jeffrey rolled to his feet and charged toward the falling amulet, energy blast sizzling past him. He leapt, snatching it from the air, then tucked into a roll that carried him behind another ventilation unit. The Dravians converged on his position, but Jeffrey was already moving, zigzagging across the roof toward the ladder where Landra waited. A blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around, but he kept his feet. "Jeffrey!" Landra cried out. "Go!" he shouted, waving her down the ladder. She hesitated, then descended. Jeffrey reached the edge of the roof just as another volley of blasts tore through the air around him. Without slowing, he vaulted over the edge, grabbing the ladder and sliding down rather than climbing. His boots hit the alley floor with a thud. Landra grabbed his arm, steadying him. "You're hurt." "Just grazed me," he lied, ignoring the burning pain in his shoulder. "Come on." They ran through the winding alleys of Nexus Prime's lower district, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. Jeffrey's military training took over, leading them through a series of random turns designed to lose anyone following. Finally, breathless and aching, they ducked into an abandoned storefront. Jeffrey peered through the grimy window, watching for signs of pursuit. "I think we lost them," he said after a moment. "For now." He turned to find Landra much closer than he expected. Her hands went to his injured shoulder, gently probing the wound. "It needs treatment," she said, her voice soft with concern. "It'll keep," Jeffrey replied, suddenly very aware of her proximity. The amulet pulsed between them, still clutched in his hand, its glow casting blue shadows across her face. Their eyes met, and that current flowed between them again. Stronger now, almost tangible. Jeffrey could feel her heartbeat, or maybe it was his own, racing in time with the pulse of the amulet. "The side effects you mentioned," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Is this one of them?" Landra's fingers lingered on his shoulder, then slowly moved up to trace the line of his jaw. "The heart connects its protectors," she explained. "It creates a bond, a heightened awareness of each other." "Is that what this is?" Jeffrey murmured, leaning closer. "Awareness?" Her lips parted slightly. "Among my people, the heart's protectors are always paired. The connection it creates, it's meant to be intimate." The word hung between them, charged with meaning. "And does it always feel like this?" Jeffrey asked, his free hand moving to her waist. "I wouldn't know," she admitted. "I've never been chosen before. Neither has anyone in generations." The amulet pulsed again, brighter this time, and with it came a wave of sensation. Landra's emotions flowing into him and his into her. Desire, curiosity, fear, excitement, all mingling together until he couldn't tell where his feelings ended and hers began. "Landra," he whispered, drawing her closer. Their lips met, tentatively at first, then with growing hunger. Her skin was cool against his, her scent exotic and intoxicating. The amulet blazed between them, its light enveloping them both. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Landra's eyes were wide with wonder. "Humans are very direct," she said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Is that a complaint?" Jeffrey asked, his thumb tracing circles on her waist. "An observation." Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him back to her. "I approve." Outside, sirens wailed as security forces responded to the attack on Jeffrey's building. The Dravian Syndicate was still out there hunting them. The heart of Cerulean still needed protection. But for this moment, in an abandoned shop on a backwater trading post, none of that seemed to matter. The amulet had chosen them, bound them together. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The moment shattered with the sound of heavy boots on pavement. "They found us," Jeffrey whispered, pulling away from Landra reluctantly. He peered through a crack in the boarded-up window. 3 Dravians, moving building to building. Landra touched the amulet, which had dimmed to a soft glow. The heart's energy signature. They're tracking it. "Can you shut it down somehow?" She shook her head. "Not now that it's chosen us." The bond is forming, growing stronger. Her eyes met his, and the memory of their kiss hung between them. It's too late to stop it. Jeffrey checked his wound. The blast had burned through his jacket and seared the skin beneath, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. "We need to get off this rock." The Syndicate owns half the security forces on Nexus Prime. "The spaceport," Landra agreed, "but we'll need credits for passage." Jeffrey patted his pocket with a grim smile. "Military pension. Not much, but enough to get us somewhere." "Where?" "Anywhere that's not here." They slipped out the back of the abandoned shop into a narrow service alley. The spaceport was on the far side of the commercial district, at least 20 minutes on foot. Longer if they had to avoid main thoroughfares. As they moved through the shadows of Nexus Prime's underbelly, Jeffrey found himself hyper-aware of Landra's presence beside him. The amulet's connection was growing stronger. He could sense her anxiety, her determination, and underneath it all, a warm current of something else directed at him. "Is it always going to be like this?" he asked quietly as they paused at an intersection. "Being in each other's heads?" Landra's lips curved into a small smile. "The legends say the bond stabilizes eventually. Protectors learn to control what flows between them." She hesitated. "Does it bother you?" "No," Jeffrey admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "It's just new. For me as well." Her fingers brushed his, sending a pleasant shiver up his arm. "My people don't usually form connections so quickly. We have elaborate courtship rituals that can last for months." "Sorry to rush things," Jeffrey said with a wry smile. "I'm not complaining." Her violet eyes held his for a moment longer than necessary. "Humans are refreshingly direct. It's one of your species' more appealing qualities." A siren wailed nearby, breaking the moment. They pressed on, weaving through back alleys and service corridors, avoiding the main streets where Dravian patrols would be searching. As they neared the commercial district, the crowds thickened, a blessing and a curse. They could blend in more easily, but so could their pursuers. "Keep your head down," Jeffrey murmured, guiding Landra with a hand at the small of her back. The spaceport entrance is just past that market square. They merged with the flow of pedestrians, Jeffrey scanning constantly for threats. The amulet was tucked safely inside Landra's tunic, its glow muted but still detectable if one knew what to look for. They were halfway across the square when Landra suddenly stiffened. "Jeffrey," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. He followed her gaze to a tall, imposing figure standing near the spaceport entrance. Unlike the other Dravians they'd encountered, this one wore no armor, only an elegant black coat that accentuated his muscular blue frame. His face was marked with intricate scarification, the sign of a high-ranking syndicate lord. "That's Ven Morrow," Landra breathed, "the syndicate's master of acquisition." "Friend of yours?" Jeffrey asked, pulling her behind a vendor's stall. "He was my mother's student before he betrayed the temple." Her voice hardened. "He's been hunting the heart for years, if he's here personally." "Then this is bigger than we thought," Jeffrey finished. "Any other exits to the spaceport?" "Cargo entrance on the east side, but it'll be guarded." Jeffrey weighed their options. Ven hadn't spotted them yet, but it was only a matter of time. The spaceport was their only way off Nexus Prime, and every minute they delayed increased the risk of capture. "I have an idea," he said finally, "but you're not going to like it." 5 minutes later, Landra was striding purposefully toward the spaceport entrance, her head held high. She'd removed her outer tunic, revealing a form-fitting undershirt that drew appreciative glances from passers-by. The heart of cerulean was conspicuously absent from around her neck. Ven Morrow spotted her immediately, his scarred face twisting into a predatory smile. He moved to intercept her, flanked by 2 guards. "Landra Valen?" he called, his voice carrying across the square. "What a pleasant surprise." Landra stopped, affecting a look of shock. "Ven, I didn't expect to see you here." "No?" He circled her slowly, yellow eyes gleaming. "Strange, considering the energy surge we detected. The heart has awakened, hasn't it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied coolly. Ven's hand shot out, gripping her chin. "Don't play games with me, Landra." "Where is it?" Meanwhile, Jeffrey approached the cargo entrance from the shadows, the heart of cerulean concealed in his jacket. The connection with Landra thrummed in his mind. He could feel her fear, but also her resolve. She was buying him time. 2 Dravian guards stood at the entrance, checking credentials of the workers moving cargo to and from the docked ships. Jeffrey waited until a particularly large loader droid approached, then fell in step behind it, using its bulk as cover. As he'd hoped, the guards were more concerned with the droid's manifest than with the human walking in its shadow. He slipped past them into the cargo bay, his senses alert for any sign of pursuit. Through his connection with Landra, he felt a spike of alarm. Ven was growing impatient. He needed to move faster. The cargo bay opened onto the main concourse of the spaceport. Jeffrey scanned the departure board. A freighter bound for the Antares system was leaving in 20 minutes. It wasn't ideal, but it would get them away from Nexus Prime. He approached the booking terminal, keeping his head down. "1 passage on the Antares freighter," he told the bored-looking Felician clerk. 50 credits, the clerk replied, not looking up from his screen. "Cargo hold only, no amenities." "Fine." Jeffrey transferred the credits. "Make it 2 passages." The clerk's eye stalk swiveled toward him. "Name?" "Smith," Jeffrey said, using the most common human surname he could think of. "John and Jane Smith." The clerk didn't seem to care enough to question it. He processed the booking and handed Jeffrey 2 boarding chips. "Bay 12, 15 minutes." Jeffrey pocketed the chips and made his way toward the main entrance. Through his connection with Landra, he sent a wordless reassurance. He had secured their passage. He found a vantage point with a clear view of the entrance. Ven still had Landra cornered, his posture growing more aggressive by the second. "Search her," Ven commanded his guards. Jeffrey tensed, ready to intervene, but Landra caught his eye across the concourse and gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. She had this under control. "You want to search me, Ven?" she said loudly, drawing attention from nearby travelers. "Here?" In front of everyone. Ven hesitated, aware of the scene they were creating. Syndicate operations typically avoided public scrutiny. "The heart isn't here," Landra continued. "I came to Nexus Prime tracking rumors of a cerulean artifact." Clearly, I was mistaken. Ven's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that?" "Search me if you must," she challenged, "but you'll find nothing but disappointment, as usual." The barb struck home. Ven's face darkened with rage, but he was too disciplined to lose control completely. He signaled his guards to stand down. "This isn't over, Landra," he growled. "The heart belongs to the Syndicate now. Your mother couldn't stop us, and neither can you." "We'll see," she replied, then turned and walked away, her back straight and proud. Jeffrey met her at the edge of the concourse, fighting the urge to pull her into his arms. "Bay 12, he murmured. "We've got 10 minutes." They moved quickly through the spaceport, the heart pulsing gently against Jeffrey's chest. They had almost reached Bay 12 when an alarm blared throughout the concourse. "All security personnel, lockdown protocols in effect," announced a mechanical voice. "Suspected terrorist activity. All departures suspended." "Ven," Landra whispered. "He's not taking chances." Jeffrey grabbed her hand. "Run!" The freighter's engines roared to life as Jeffrey and Landra sprinted across the docking bay. Security barriers were already descending, threatening to cut off their escape. "Faster!" Jeffrey shouted, pulling Landra by the hand. They dove through the closing cargo hatch just as the final lockdown protocols engaged. The hatch sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, leaving them sprawled on the cold metal floor of the freighter's hold. "That," Landra gasped, "was too close." Jeffrey helped her to her feet, both of them breathing hard. The cargo hold was dimly lit and packed with shipping containers, the air thick with the smell of engine oil and preservatives. "We should find somewhere to hide until we're in hyperspace," he suggested, scanning the hold for security cameras. Landra nodded, adjusting her clothing. The heart of Cerulean pulsed gently against Jeffrey's chest, its warmth a constant reminder of their connection. They made their way deeper into the hold, finding a small maintenance alcove partially hidden behind a stack of containers. It was cramped but defensible, with only one approach. "This will do," Jeffrey said, settling down with his back against the wall. "Once we break orbit, we can—" A sudden lurch cut him off as the freighter detached from its moorings. Through the small viewport in the cargo hold, they could see Nexus Prime falling away beneath them. "We made it," Landra breathed, relief evident in her voice. Jeffrey wasn't so sure. "That was too easy. Ven doesn't strike me as the type to give up so quickly." As if on cue, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention passengers," came a gravelly voice. "This is Captain Drell. We've received a security alert from Nexus Prime authorities. All passengers are required to report to the main deck for identification verification." Jeffrey and Landra exchanged alarmed glances. "That's not standard procedure," Jeffrey whispered. "No," Landra agreed. "It's a trap." Through their connection, Jeffrey could feel her fear, but also her determination. The heart's energy pulsed in time with their accelerated heartbeats. "We need a plan," he said, peering out from their hiding spot. "How many crew members on a freighter this size?" 5, maybe 6, Landra estimated, plus the captain. Jeffrey nodded grimly. "And we have no idea how many are working for the Syndicate." "Probably all of them," Landra said. "Ven is thorough." The intercom crackled again. "This is your final warning. All passengers report to the main deck immediately, or we will begin a compartment-by-compartment search." Jeffrey's military training kicked in. "We need to take control of this ship." Landra's violet eyes widened. "Just the two of us? Against an entire crew?" "Unless you'd prefer to wait for Ven's welcoming committee." He gave her a tight smile. "Besides, I've done more with less." "You humans and your impossible confidence," Landra said, shaking her head. But there was admiration in her voice. Jeffrey checked his wound. The pain had subsided to a dull throb. "First, we need weapons." They moved silently through the cargo hold, searching for anything useful. In a maintenance locker, Jeffrey found a plasma cutter and a heavy wrench. Not ideal, but better than nothing. "The bridge will be on the upper deck," Landra whispered, taking the wrench. "But we'll need access codes." "Then we'll start with engineering," Jeffrey decided. "Cut the power, create some confusion." As they crept toward the engineering section, the ship lurched again, this time more violently. The artificial gravity fluctuated, momentarily lifting them off the floor before slamming them back down. "What was that?" Landra gasped. The answer came in the form of a proximity alarm blaring throughout the ship. Through the viewport, they caught a glimpse of another vessel, sleek, black, and unmistakably military in design. "Syndicate Interceptor," Landra whispered. "They're going to board us." Jeffrey cursed under his breath. Their timeline had just accelerated dramatically. "Change of plans," he said. "We go straight for the bridge." They abandoned stealth for speed, racing through the corridors of the freighter toward the upper deck. The heart of Cerulean pulsed against Jeffrey's chest, its energy seeming to flow through him, heightening his senses. They encountered the first crew member outside the mess hall, a burly Felician who barely had time to reach for his communicator before Jeffrey's plasma cutter hummed to life. One quick swipe disabled the alien's equipment, and a follow-up strike with the handle sent him crumpling to the floor. "Not bad," Landra commented, relieving the unconscious alien of his sidearm. "For a human," Jeffrey grinned, "just getting warmed up." The next two crew members fell just as quickly, one to Landra's newly acquired blaster, set to stun, and the other to a well-placed wrench throw from Jeffrey. As they approached the bridge, the ship shuddered again. Through the viewports, they could see the Syndicate vessel moving into docking position. "We're out of time," Jeffrey said, checking the blaster he'd taken from the second crew member. "Ready?" Landra nodded, her silver hair gleaming in the emergency lights that had begun to flash throughout the ship. The heart pulsed between them, and Jeffrey felt a surge of something flowing from her to him. Strength, resolve, and something deeper, more intimate. Their eyes met, and in that moment the chaos around them seemed to fade away. Jeffrey reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "If we don't make it," he began. Landra silenced him with a kiss, fierce, passionate, and over far too quickly. "We'll make it," she said firmly. "Together." The bridge door loomed before them. Jeffrey took a deep breath, then kicked it open, weapon raised. Captain Drell, a tall, spindly Dravian with mottled blue skin, spun around in shock. Two other crew members reached for their weapons but froze when they saw the blasters aimed at them. "What is the meaning of this?" Drell demanded, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Change of command," Jeffrey replied coolly. "You're working for the Syndicate." Drell's expression confirmed it. "You have no idea what you're interfering with, human." "I know enough," Jeffrey said, advancing into the bridge. "Now call off that interceptor." Drell laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Or what? You'll shoot me? Then you'll never get past the Syndicate vessel." "He might not shoot you," Landra said, stepping forward with the heart of Cerulean now visible around her neck. "But I will." The amulet blazed with blue light, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Drell's eyes widened in recognition and fear. "The heart," he whispered. "It's chosen you." "Both of us," Landra corrected, glancing at Jeffrey. "Now you have two choices. Help us escape, or find out what happens when the heart's protectors are threatened." Through their connection, Jeffrey could feel Landra's bluff. The heart's power wasn't fully awakened yet, couldn't be used as a weapon in its current state, but Drell didn't know that. The captain hesitated, then slowly reached for the communications panel. "Interceptor Ven's Fury, this is Captain Drell. We've experienced a system malfunction. Request you abort docking procedure until we can stabilize." There was a tense pause, then a response. "Understood, Freighter Antares. You have 10 minutes to resolve your issues before we board." Drell cut the communication. "There. 10 minutes, that's all you get." Jeffrey moved quickly, securing the other crew members while Landra kept her weapon trained on Drell. "Plot a course away from the interceptor," Jeffrey ordered. "Maximum speed." "Where to?" Drell asked sullenly. Jeffrey glanced at Landra. This was her mission, her amulet, her choice. "The Cerulean system," she said without hesitation. "We need to reach the Temple of Ascension." Drell's fingers moved over the navigation console. "That's 3 jumps from here. We'll never make it before they catch us." "Just get us out of their immediate range," Jeffrey said. "We'll worry about the rest later." As Drell programmed the course, Jeffrey moved to Landra's side. "The temple?" he asked quietly. "Is that where we can secure the heart?" She nodded. "It's the only place where its power can be properly contained or fully awakened." "Fully awakened?" Jeffrey raised an eyebrow. "What exactly does that mean?" Before Landra could answer, the ship lurched forward, accelerating away from the interceptor. On the view screen, the Syndicate vessel began to give chase. "They're not buying it," Drell announced with grim satisfaction. "Weapons range in 30 seconds. Jeffrey took the helm, pushing the freighter's engines beyond safety parameters. The ship groaned in protest but began to pull ahead of the interceptor. "We just need to reach the jump point," he muttered, hands flying over the controls. The interceptor fired a warning shot across their bow. The freighter shuddered from the near miss. 20 seconds to jump point, Drell reported. Landra moved to stand behind Jeffrey, one hand on his shoulder. Through their connection, he felt her anxiety, but also her trust in him. The heart pulsed between them, its energy seeming to flow into the ship itself. 10 seconds, Drell counted down. They're targeting our engines. Jeffrey made a series of rapid adjustments, throwing the freighter into an evasive pattern that no commercial vessel should have been capable of. The interceptor's shots went wide. 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into lines as the freighter leapt into hyperspace, leaving the interceptor behind, at least temporarily. Jeffrey slumped back in the pilot's seat, exhaustion catching up with him. Landra's hand squeezed his shoulder, her touch sending warmth through his body despite his fatigue. That, she said with genuine admiration, was impressive flying. Former Earth Fleet, Jeffrey explained with a tired smile. Tactical division. You continue to surprise me, human, Landra murmured, her violet eyes holding his. The moment was interrupted by Drell's harsh voice. They'll be right behind us. The jump only buys you minutes, not hours. Jeffrey nodded grimly. Then we'd better make the most of them. They'll catch us at the next jump point, Drell announced with undisguised satisfaction. The Syndicate Interceptor's engines are superior to this old freighter. Jeffrey checked the navigation console. They had maybe 20 minutes before exiting hyperspace, and the Syndicate vessel would be right behind them. We need options, he said, turning to Landra. She stood by the viewport, the heart of cerulean glowing against her blue skin. There is a way, she said quietly. The heart, it can help us. How? Jeffrey asked, joining her. The bonding ritual? Her violet eyes met his. If completed, it would fully awaken the heart's power. We could use it to mask our energy signature, maybe even boost the ship's systems. What kind of ritual? Jeffrey asked, though from the way Landra's skin darkened in a blush, he had a pretty good idea. Among my people, the heart's protectors are paired not just as guardians, but as life companions. She touched the amulet, which pulsed in response. The ritual completes the bond that's already forming between us. Jeffrey felt warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. And this ritual, it's intimate, very. Her lips curved in a small smile. The heart was created to be protected by those who share the deepest connection possible. My mother used to say it responds to the energy created when two souls truly join. From the helm, Drell made a disgusted noise. Cerulean mysticism, you're wasting time. Shut up and fly the ship, Jeffrey ordered without taking his eyes off Landra. To her, he said, Are you sure about this? We barely know each other. The heart chose us, Jeffrey. She took his hand, placing it over the amulet. It hummed beneath his touch, sending pleasant vibrations up his arm. It doesn't make mistakes. Through their connection, he felt her certainty and something else. Desire, not just physical, but a longing for the bond the ritual would create. It mirrored his own feelings, which had been growing since that first moment in the marketplace. 15 minutes to exit from hyperspace, Drell announced. Jeffrey made his decision. What do we need to do? Landra's eyes lit up. We need privacy, and the heart needs to be between us. Jeffrey secured the bridge, making sure Drell and the other crew members couldn't cause trouble. Then he followed Landra to the captain's quarters, the only private space on the small freighter. The room was sparse but functional, with a narrow bed and a small viewport showing the swirling chaos of hyperspace. Landra locked the door behind them, then turned to face Jeffrey. In the old stories, she said, removing the heart from around her neck, the protectors would exchange vows before completing the bond. What kind of vows? Jeffrey asked, suddenly nervous despite everything they'd been through. Promises to protect each other and the heart. She took his hands, placing the amulet between their palms. To share their strength, their wisdom, their hearts. The amulet pulsed, growing warmer. Jeffrey felt their connection deepening, Landra's emotions flowing into him, her hope, her fear, her growing affection for him. I can do that, he said softly. They sat on the edge of the bed facing each other, the heart cradled between their joined hands. Landra began to speak in her native language, musical, flowing words that the amulet somehow translated directly into Jeffrey's mind. I, Landra Valen, daughter of guardians, offer my protection, my wisdom, and my heart to you, Jeffrey Blackwood of Earth. I bind myself to you as the heart's chosen, from this moment until the stars grow cold." The amulet flared brighter, its warmth intensifying. Jeffrey found himself responding, the words coming naturally as if the heart itself were guiding him. "I, Jeffrey Blackwood of Earth, offer my protection, my strength, and my heart to you, Landra Valen. I accept the heart's choice and bind myself to you, from this moment until the stars grow cold." The amulet blazed with blue light, bathing the small room in its glow. Jeffrey felt a surge of energy flowing between them, their connection expanding until he could sense every beat of Landra's heart, every breath she took. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. The heart pulsed between them, its rhythm matching their accelerating heartbeats. Jeffrey's hands moved to Landra's waist, drawing her closer. "The ritual," she whispered against his lips, "requires complete union." What followed was the most profound experience of Jeffrey's life. Their bodies joined with the same perfect harmony as their minds, the heart's energy flowing through them both, heightening every sensation. Through their bond, Jeffrey felt Landra's pleasure as his own, creating an endless feedback loop of shared ecstasy. The heart blazed brighter with each passing moment, until the entire room was filled with its radiance. At the peak of their union, the amulet released a pulse of energy that swept through the ship, through them, through the very fabric of space around them. When Jeffrey could think clearly again, he found himself lying beside Landra, their limbs entwined, the heart glowing softly between them. Through their now completed bond, he could feel her contentment, her wonder, and her love, a feeling he returned with his whole being. "Did it work?" he asked, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Before she could answer, the ship lurched violently. The intercom crackled to life with Drell's panicked voice. "We've dropped out of hyperspace, but we're nowhere near the jump point." Jeffrey and Landra dressed quickly and rushed back to the bridge. The view screen showed unfamiliar stars. They had indeed exited hyperspace far from their planned coordinates. "What happened?" Jeffrey demanded. Drell's yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. "The ship just jumped on its own. We've covered 3 times the distance we should have." Landra touched the heart, which now glowed with a steady, powerful light. "The ritual worked. The heart has awakened." "And it transported us?" Jeffrey asked in amazement. "It responded to our need," Landra explained. "We needed to escape, so it helped." The navigation console beeped. They were on the edge of the Cerulean system, just hours from Landra's homeworld, and there was no sign of pursuit. "Impossible," Drell muttered. "No artifact has that kind of power." "The heart is more than an artifact," Landra said. "It's a piece of my people's ancient technology, merged with something more." Through their bond, Jeffrey sensed her awe and her relief. They had done it. The heart was awakened, and they were nearly home. But their victory was short-lived. A proximity alarm blared, and the view screen showed a massive vessel dropping out of hyperspace directly ahead of them. "Syndicate Dreadnought," Drell said, his voice hollow. "Ven's flagship." "How?" Jeffrey demanded. "How did they find us?" "They didn't need to," Landra realized. "They were already heading for my world. Ven knows the heart must eventually return to the temple." The Dreadnought's communication system hailed them. Ven Morrow's scarred face appeared on the screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with triumph. "Landra Valen," he said, his voice smooth with satisfaction, "and her human pet. How convenient that you've brought the heart right to me." "The heart has chosen its protectors, Ven," Landra replied defiantly. "You can't control it now." Ven laughed. "I don't need to control it. I only need to destroy the temple. Without its anchor point, the heart becomes just another pretty bauble." Jeffrey felt Landra's horror through their bond. "He's going to bombard the temple from orbit," she whispered. "Precisely," Ven confirmed. "My forces are already moving into position. Surrender now, and I might let you live long enough to witness the end of your people's legacy." The transmission cut off. Jeffrey turned to Landra, whose face had gone pale. "Can he do that? Destroy the temple?" "Yes," she said grimly. "And without the temple, the heart's power will fade. All we've done will be for nothing." Jeffrey took her hand, feeling the strength of their bond. "Then we stop him." How? We're in a freighter against a dreadnought. Jeffrey smiled, a plan already forming in his mind. The heart responded to our need before. Let's see what else it can do. He turned to Drell. Set a course for the temple. Maximum speed. You're insane, the captain protested. We'll be blown out of the sky. Maybe, Jeffrey agreed. Or maybe humanity's got one more trick up its sleeve. Through their bond, he shared his plan with Landra. Her eyes widened, then she smiled. A fierce, determined expression that made his heart race. It's crazy, she said. It might just work. As the freighter accelerated towards Cerulean Prime, the heart of Cerulean pulsed between them, ready for its final test.